fantasy booking. I think everything continues the way it is, and it's kind of like on Dallas when all of a sudden Bobby Ewing wasn't dead, he was in the shower, and it was all a dream. We all wake up, and this was all just a fucking nightmare. None of this stupidity, which, in case you haven't realized, draws less and less. None of this stupidity still was taking place. That's my dream.
That may be the best angle yet. Are you doing any shows on Mars this week?
None on Mars. Perhaps Jupiter, Venus, and Neptune. You'll have to find out on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, on Twitter at Super Podcast, or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. Few notes. Each and every week we review Mid-South Wrestling and Mid-Atlantic Wrestling on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, giving you a chance to go through each episode in order, find out what was happening, hear some audio, and get an idea of what was happening in the entire world of wrestling at that period of time. Check them out. The Mid-South Wrestling Television Review with myself and Mike Mills at midsouthpod.com are available wherever it is that you find your favorite podcast. And also the Mid-Atlantic Championship Podcast with Mike Sempervive and Roman Gomez, available at midatlanticpod.com. Once again, available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And of course, the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership! Thank you, big boy. Coming up in the next few days, it should be released, we have a special episode, a tribute to Pampero Firpo, who just recently passed away. We're going to examine his entire career. We talked to Jeff Walton about Pampero Firpo in Los Angeles. Fumi Saito about the 4 tours of Japan Pampero Firpo made. Dave Brzezinski, or Dave Drayson. He has many different names. Supermouth we talked to about Detroit. We talked to Bill Atkinson about 50th State Wrestling, plus John Arezzi on New York. We have Flying Fred Curry on the show, and an extended talk with Pampero Firpo's daughter Mary about the man and the wrestler. This is some really great stuff. We also have some exclusive, hasn't been heard, I don't think, since it originally aired, audio. We have Pampero Firpo in Hawaii in 1968, including the opening of the show, which Lanny Poffo has cited as the specific clip that influenced Randy Savage to adopt "Ooh Yeah" as his expression, as well as 1972 audio of Pampero Firpo and the Grand Wizard, the debut promo in New York, as well as his first match on Championship Wrestling TV with a rookie Vince McMahon as commentator. Check this out, 605pod.com, available wherever it is that you find your favorite podcast. And episode 102 is also in production. It should be out probably within a week and a half or so, but stay tuned for more information. The Mothership!
Where do you get all those crazy toys? You find this audio and all these long archived and forgotten and buried clips and things. You're a Sherlock Holmes of wrestling.
Well, you know, I have like a legitimate fear of history being lost. And with wrestling, it's actually more of a reality than it is really anything else. I always say this: music, politics, sports, entertainment, whatever it is, there's a documented history. There are always stories that are whispered and aren't in books, but for the most part, we know what went on. There are documents, there are books, there are stories, there are people to tell their stories. In wrestling, we don't have that. An entire generation of wrestlers died not breaking kayfabe, at least not publicly. There weren't books, there weren't newsletters, there weren't extensive interviews. There was footage that was erased, taped over, burned, just thrown in trash bins, as some of us may know.
Yes.
And I just think, especially when covering wrestling history, there's a true responsibility to try to get it right, try to tell the story accurately and honestly, and I search for whatever information I can. I do legitimate research when I'm putting together these things, and you never know what you're going to bump into. But I think it's important with wrestling history, especially, to try to document as much of this as possible.
Well, we're going to document this past Wednesday night's television programs in a few minutes. But first, we are going to go to the phones for a call for Knoxville, Tennessee, with one of my favorite people in the world, and talk to Tom Pritchard about training and all kinds of stuff. Can you set up the electronics to put Tom on the line?
I could set it up, and Dr. Tom Pritchard should be available right now.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now on the Jim Cornette Experience, what an experience it's going to be, ladies and gentlemen. There are those people in the world that when I get together with them, the energy, the positive energy that erupts can just bring the heavens down. And this guy is one of them. Boy, as soon as me and him get together instantly, well, here's another thing about this fucking guy. And we could just go on like that all night long. But we're going to be positive here on the program. He is not only we forget to mention that he was a great professional wrestler and star of numerous territories and the WWF and Smoky Mountain Wrestling in his day, because he has established himself over the last number of years as one of the preeminent trainers in professional wrestling. Everybody from Vince McMahon and The Rock to who's next? We don't know. We're going to ask him. We're going to find out. Dr. Tom Pritchard from beautiful downtown Knoxville, Tennessee. How are you, Doc?
Jim, I'm always looking forward to a positive experience when I talk to you. So, yeah, we're going to make it a good one. We're going to make it a positive experience. I'm doing tremendous right now in downtown Knoxville, Tennessee. It's a beautiful day. Skies are overcast, and if it's a perfect day to go swimming, I don't know. But anyway, perfect day to do something other than be outside. And if you have an indoor swimming pool, I suggest it right now.
You have been run out of your facility, the Jacobs Pritchard Wrestling Academy, JPWA. Jacobs Pritchard Wrestling Academy has construction going on today. Things are, the walls are going up. You're growing by leaps and bounds, and you've been run out to the sanctitude and sanctimoniousness of your automobile so we can get some quiet to do this program. But you know, you nicknamed, I think in Florida, one of those wrestle reunion things. You named me and Jimmy Hart the Feather and the Spike, because like Jimmy's always, oh baby, I love you, baby. Oh poo poo, how you poo poo, and I'm always like, this fucking guy, goddamn, what the fuck is going on here? You're like, he's the feather and you're the spike.
Right.
If that's the case, I think you're a fist in a velvet glove. You deliver a stern and hard message, but sometimes you can coat it in a velvet glove so that it goes down easier for your wrestling school students.
Well, there is that occasion when I do have to soften the blow just a little bit, but I have been known at times to throw a few goddams out there too, and it gets a little easier as time goes on. But then all of a sudden, I'll stub my toe on somebody and say, "Man, this guy has potential. He has talent. Why isn't he getting it?" And then I have to stop, sit back, and realize that nobody just comes in into this business anymore. Nobody just comes to training anymore. From the perspective that I had when I started. So that's where I have to kind of stop and regroup and align myself with the fact that it ain't the same business that I grew up in. It ain't the same business you grew up in. It's a totally different world and a totally different way to look at it. But the one thing that never changes is the basics and fundamentals of what professional wrestling is. So once we get past that, and once I get past telling them just because Rob Van Dam did it doesn't mean you can or should do it. And I explained to them, you have to have a solid foundation to work from before you can start doing the other stuff. And some get it and some don't.
Everybody's got to realize there is a reason why some people are called an exception to the rule. Because if everyone was an exception to the rule, they wouldn't be exceptional, and there would really be no rule. Just because.
And if you have no rules, then you have rulers, and that doesn't work either. So there you go.
Well, there you go. You touched on something. We're talking about just training in general, but you said when you have to throw a few goddams in there, a part of the thing that has changed about. Some people are now upset about being yelled at in wrestling training, and which, you know, is like in the previous era when it was the pretense that wrestling was a sport. A lot of these guys came from football backgrounds, or at least some high school level athletics or college, or even the pros, et cetera, or at the very least, we're used to being yelled at in an environment where they were being taught, trained, coached, because it was a business where you were getting kicked in the face. It wasn't an accounting firm that you were applying to, you know, for a job at. It doesn't mean because Bear Bryant yelled at all those players when he coached Alabama that he hated personally every single one of them. But in the moment, you are imparting crucial information in a very short period of time. And sometimes it's, go to the ring, motherfucker. And,
right.
But it's like I'm thinking that now the change has turned to where a lot of people get in the business thinking that this is going to be more of an acting class or a theater project, and we have roles to play and etc. And everyone should be reading the lines. And it's the atmosphere has changed, but at the root of it, you're still getting coached in what purports to be a professional sport.
Right. And my attitude and my perception and take on the whole thing is this. It's still professional wrestling. We have a coach here, a basketball coach here, Rick Barnes, who talked about he doesn't cuss and yell at his players. Okay, and he's doing pretty good with the guys. But at the same time, I think frustration will reign in anybody who you're trying to show or demonstrate or communicate what you want them to do. And professional wrestling, as you well know, it is athletic, and it's impromptu, improv, and a lot of elements combined that not everyone sees firsthand when they watch wrestling on TV these days. And it is a different product than I was introduced to. But at the same time, you still have the elements of a lockup. You still have to grab a hold. You still have to go through a match. You still have to understand what the mechanics are and how it works. And it's not easy. Therefore, some people react great to a pat on the back. Some people react great to a kick in the ass. And there's not too much distance between that. So you have to figure out, who do you need to do this to and who do you need to do that to? And that can be a challenge figuring it out. But at the same time, at the end of the day, when I see guys eventually getting it because they don't want to hear, hey, what the hell are you doing anymore, then that's gratifying. Because sometimes that's going to happen. And if you have passion for this, you're not going to be any good at it. I don't believe, and I don't think you're going to like it. You have to love this. You have to understand it's not as pristine and clean and clinical as some people may think. These days, you do have a clean, pristine place to go and learn and train and everything, and that's good and that's great. But at the same time, I think it really helps if you get down to the bottom of it and the nitty gritty. There's going to be a little dirt. There's going to be a little salt. There's going to be some seasoning you have to put on, and it's not always going to be pretty. You're going to get mat burns. You're going to hurt yourself. Hopefully you don't hurt yourself. But the thing is,
well, that goes back to what you were talking about, the basics. It's not that we're trying to say, okay, don't do the moonsault and don't do all these moves you see on television. We're trying to say, you don't just take 5 guys off a playground that are playing basketball and say, okay, here, we've got a game set up for you with the Celtics. Just go out and
right.
Then they're going to run as fast as they can and shoot the ball every time they get their hands on it, but they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. The basics of wrestling are meant to protect yourself and your opponent. But between you and me, we have, over the last however many decades, discovered, booked, broken in, helped train, given exposure to a large percentage of the people that have been big-time stars in the major companies over the last 20 years. You can tell when a guy can kind of sort of is getting it, but the point is, it's not like a drill sergeant. There's been the accusations made that some programs were too physically demanding. No, at the same point, if you don't want to get cussed out, don't get trained by Rip Rogers, but he's one of the best in the world.
Right.
But the point is, the level of training that you get at the start, helps you when then you go out and invent all that shit. And if you don't have a level of training to master the basics of how to protect yourself and other people, then you're never going to get the job on a mainstream